Sometimes actors appear in a TV show early in their career, then return later for a bigger role. Other times they're cast in 2 minor roles and the showrunners just hope we won't notice. In-show gags like David Schwimmer playing both Ross and Russ in Friends obviously don't count, as we're supposed to notice this. Recasted roles will count, but only if the early version was weird and or forgettable. To qualify for this list, an actor must have played 2 distinct roles in the same show, with the vague qualifier of people generally not noticing or realizing that they've appeared in the very same show before. Sometimes when these actors return, the character or characters they're playing are similar enough that there might have been some off-screen character progression that we just haven't been told about. It also counts if someone is explicitly the same character who appeared in an earlier episode, but are so different from their former version that no one remembers their origins anymore. With that in mind though, there are plenty of examples of an actor or character cropping up twice in a show with no real explanation. I'm Will for Whatculture, and here are 10 weird early versions of TV characters you totally forgot about. 10. Leslie Knope, Parks and Recreation. Starting off with a bit of a tame one, as there is no recasting or funky new character direction, and considering Knope is the central character throughout the entire show, it certainly isn't a case of a long-forgotten character returning. However, it certainly feels like Leslie Knope is a new character in Season 2, as from then onwards she's almost unrecognisable from the bumbling fool of Season 1. Like Steve Carell's lack of hair plugs in the first season of The Office, early Leslie Knope is particularly jarring on a rewatch. It's natural, especially in a show this long running, that the characters will develop somewhat. Larry, Gary, Jerry, Ron, April, Andy, Anne, etc. all change as the series goes on. In each and every case though, these transitions are gradual and realistic. Leslie Knope has more of a finger-click change, spinning on a dime between the first 2 seasons. Initially, she's a bumbling loser who's terrible at everything she does. Relatable, you might say. Later, she's a hard-working sweetheart, who usually still fails, but at least she's not pathetic. This change was so warmly received that most fans have pushed the original Knope out of their minds. On a rewatch though, she is, alas, unavoidable. 9. Tommen Baratheon, Game of Thrones. Tommen Baratheon is a bit of a twofer. Firstly, like Myrcella and the Mountain, he's played by 2 different actors. Of these though, only the Mountain is worth discussing, as he's played by 3 different actors across his time in the show, and has considerable screen time across all 3. In the Mountain's case, this was just standard recasting due to scheduling conflicts with a fairly minor character. For Tommen and his sister, it was down to casting kids with the right look, then hiring more talented actors when the role grew later in the series. To find Dean Charles Chapman for Tommen though, they didn't need to look far. He had previously played another Lannister, as one of Robb Stark's prisoners in between Jaime's release and Robb's death at the Red Wedding. He's indirectly responsible for the war's tide turning, despite his on-screen role being incredibly minor. He's killed by Rickard Karstark while prisoner, as revenge for Jaime killing Rickard's son Harold and being allowed to first live and then leave. Robb is incensed that Karstark disobeyed a direct order, and that he killed innocent boys, and takes Karstark's head as punishment. 8. Caecilius / John Frobisher / the 12th, Doctor Who. Most Doctor Who fans are aware Peter Capaldi appeared in the show prior to his stint as the Doctor, playing Pompeii citizen Caecilius in The Fires of Pompeii. However, added into that equation is Capaldi's time as John Frobisher in Doctor Who spin-off Torchwood as well. Russell T Davies, the original showrunner of the revival series, claimed Frobisher was a direct descendant of Caecilius, and thus only exists because of the Doctor's intervention in saving him and his family. Stephen Moffat, who wrote Frobisher's final episode and replaced Davies as showrunner, confirmed this theory and said Frobisher's suicide was a way of time righting itself after Caecilius was saved. Better late than never, I guess. As for the 12th, his link to Caecilius is not familial, but emotional. The Doctor chose Caecilius' face to remind him to always save people, just as he did with Caecilius in The Fires of Pompeii. As it is to be expected of a show with such a wibbly-wobbly lore, they did a great job of justifying why 3 seemingly disparate characters are all played by the same man. And this isn't the only time The Fires of Pompeii was involved in some Doctor Who casting funny business either. 7. Soothsayer and Amy Pond, Doctor Who. While die-hard Doctor Who fans might have been aware of Capaldi, what hardly ever comes up is Karen Gillan's multiple parts. She played the 11th assistant Amy Pond, and in the very same episode as Caecilius, played the Soothsayer. It's easy to argue this is just her playing two different characters. However, theorists bent over backwards to justify Capaldi's multiple roles, and fellow assistant Clara Oswald also had an in-canon ancestor appear before her assistant character made her debut, so there's form here. Amy Pond has a strong connection to Roman imagery through Rory, and the fact she appeared with Caecilius opens the door for speculation too. It doesn't seem like this was planned, and for a couple of reasons nobody seems to have asked any questions. When she appeared as Amy Pond, Gillian still wasn't a big name, so nobody bothered about the fact she'd been in it previously. However, after her successful run on the show and starring roles in Guardians of the Galaxy and Jumanji, she's now a much bigger star. Still, she'd left the show before Capaldi entered it, so all the eyes were on the Doctor himself. 6. Lenny and Carl, The Simpsons. The early seasons of The Simpsons feature a lot of little differences from Season 4's start of the Golden Era and beyond. Amongst these are the design of Moe, Lou the cop being white, Smithers being black, Ralph having Nelson's voice and little to no personality, and Bart being the central focus rather than Homer. These are just for starters, and most Simpsons fans are well aware of these differences and plenty more besides. One isn't mentioned often enough is the bizarre first appearance of Lenny and Carl. Lenny appears in the 9th episode of the show, Life on the Fast Lane, where Marge falls for her bowling instructor Jacques. Coincidentally, this was also the first episode to win an Emmy, though that has little to do with Lenny Leonard's debut. His partner in crime, Carl Carlson, appears one episode later in Homer's Night Out. This time, it's Homer's turn to wreck his marriage as he's caught dancing with Princess Kashmir. However, what's weird about their appearances is that their voices are flipped. Lenny talks with Carl's voice and Carl with Lenny's. Considering how accustomed we are to hear them now, watching Season 1 can be very strange. 5. Frank Buffay Jr. Friends. Frank Buffay Jr. is one of the best supporting characters in Friends, and there's a lot of competition for that title. He only gets better when he teams up with Alice, but he actually appeared 14 episodes earlier than Frank's official debut. In that appearance, he's credited as Condom Guy, because he's the strange man who accidentally tips busking Phoebe a condom, then sheepishly returns to pick it up. There's some debate amongst the Friends fanbase as to whether Condom Guy and Frank Buffay are one and the same, or if the showrunners simply hired Giovanni Ribisi for 2 parts in the same season. The evidence doesn't really fall one way or the other. On one hand, both Frank and the Condom Guy are slightly sketchy characters, and have the same awkward nervousness to their speech. However, Ribisi has used these tics in other parts too, and is exceedingly good at pulling that sort of role off. All things considered, it's not definitive. Counting against, there's the fact that Frank doesn't live in the city and would surely have mentioned being there recently when he learns where his sister lives. The jury is still out. 4. Cleveland Jr., Family Guy and The Cleveland Show. Cleveland Jr. is one of TV's fattest characters, appearing in The Cleveland Show before moving back to Quahog with his dad for a handful of Family Guy appearances. However, he initially made his debut in a very early episode of Family Guy, Love Thy Trophy, the 5th episode of Season 2, which was initially written for Season 1 and revolves around Peter training Cleveland Jr. at golf. In this episode, he's hyperactive to the extreme, almost irritatingly so, and couldn't be further removed from the Cleveland Jr. we know and love, or like, today. Mike Judge, who voiced the character's debut and is a staff writer at both Family Guy and The Cleveland Show, explained the change in direction. With Cleveland needing a whole family for a spin-off, Cleveland Jr. needed to be aged up to make room for Rallo. While Stewie's right that Rallo is a bit of a Boondocks ripoff, he was a popular part of The Cleveland Show, so it seems like a smart choice. The hyperactive personality quickly grew tiresome in early drafts, and the more sluggish current character applied himself to comedy and storytelling much easier. 3. Deborah Chambers and Frankie Dart, Community. Community shuffled the deck a lot in the later series, adding Chang and the Dean as more active members, as well as new characters like Buzz, Frankie and Elroy, but losing Pierce, Troy and Shirley in the final 2 seasons. Frankie Dart, added to the team in Season 6 and described by various characters as the new Shirley, Annie, Abed and Jeff, was played by sitcom veteran Paget Brewster. Possibly best known for her role as Joey's and then Chandler's girlfriend Kathy, Brewster had also voiced several characters in American Dad and definitely brought her A-game to Community. What a lot of fans miss though is that Brewster actually appeared in Community a season earlier. In Analysis of Cork-based networking, she plays an IT lady, credited as Deborah Chambers. Obviously, this is a completely different name to Frankie Dart, so more than likely she's simply been cast in 2 different roles on the show. However, the roles are fairly similar, and Brewster is not a typecast actress, so at the very least the writers may have taken inspiration from her performance as Deborah when writing Frankie into Season 6. 2. Nick the IT Guy. Nick the IT Guy, that's Nick, remember it, first appears in Season 4 of The Office, but it is in fact not working in the office at all. Instead, he's at the job fair, which Pam attends, and helps her realise that without any knowledge of Photoshop or other digital art programs, she'll never make it in graphic design. He later appears in the background of several episodes, before blowing his top in the episode Whistleblower. Considering both characters have a technological bend, it's not unlikely that the job fair guy was actually Nick, either filling in for a friend or working a different job. It would be fitting too, for Pam to have such an important conversation with them and then have no memory of it when Whistleblower's storyline is put in context. Nick feels underappreciated at Dunder Mifflin Sabre by this point, not least because no one remembers his name. After Jim forgets it immediately after being told it, Nick flips out and reveals all the secrets an IT guy is privy to before storming out. If he's that forgettable, he probably is the guy who met Pam. She simply forgot. 1. Daario Naharis. Unlike all the other Game of Thrones recurring choices covered in Tommen Baratheon's entry, the Daario Naharis situation is incredibly jarring on a rewatch of the series. Initially played by Ed Skrein, Daario Naharis appears in the final 3 episodes of Season 3. Skrein's Daario was tall, slim, had long blonde hair, no beard, blue eyes, and an ethereal, angelic look. He wasn't the blue-bearded Daario from the book, but he seemed in line with the character's general feel. When Season 4 rolled around though, Daario Naharis was unrecognisable. He was shorter, bulkier, dark-haired, thickly bearded, had dark eyes, and a much more warrior-like image. Basically, he was as close to the polar opposite as you could have got. It was reported at the time that Skrein dropped for the transporter, but he's since dismissed that, claiming he left for, quote, political reasons. Even with all this though, couldn't they have gotten someone more in line with Skrein's original look to carry the role on? It's just that the visual 180 is extremely jarring, especially on a first watch where you have no idea who this new guy is until about 3 episodes into Season 4.